crowded. Good. My name is Olaf Różański. I'm here on the behalf of Krakow Technology Park. Welcome again. And let me welcome you to our panel discussion about coding and culture. Let me announce you Mr. Łukasz Hacura from Anshar Studios. Big applause. Mr. Diego de Palacio from Playsoft. Mr. Michał Staniszewski from Plastic. And our moderator of the discussion, Mr. Leszek Godlewski.
And of course, Bartłomiej Waszak from Ubisoft.
Of course,
Quebec.
I'm terribly sorry. Forgive me.
All right, so I will just maybe explain a little bit what I had in mind when we were organizing this panel. I thought that now that the game industry is sort of coming together, it's sort of maturing, it's overcoming its childhood diseases, finally. Maybe it's time to sort of talk about maybe about you know, how we feel in the industry, how we as programmers can improve the way we deliver code, the way we interact with each other and with our teams. And so this is basically about the organization culture, the collective values and processes and interactions that we have going on in our team. Yeah, so now we have introduced all the guests of the panel. Maybe I would like, it would be nice if you could tell us, every one of you, what do you understand is like a good state of culture? How do you understand the state of the team in which the team members feel good and deliver good results? Trzeba włączyć.
Okay, so maybe I will introduce my team. So we have like in total right now 9 people, where there's like a 4.5 programmer. A half is me because I'm still programming, but I'm also directing the whole game. And I'm here in behalf of our lead programmer that couldn't be here, so I will talk for him. And what is a coding culture in our small team? It's what I understand is that people still have fun of programming. That's the most important thing. The next thing is that there is like a complete team, everyone standing for everyone, so there is like no judging everyone. And basically that's it. So number one is like we are coding and having fun from that.
So hello, I represent a bit bigger studio, so I'm from Ubisoft Quebec. So we are around the whole studio, 350 people and around 100 programmers. And anyway, whenever we work on the project, usually we have some kind of organization that the team is structured with some smaller groups of people working on some specific part of the game. So it's never that all 100 programmers are working at the same time on the same thing, of course. And from my point of view, coding culture and the work culture in programming, I would say the first thing which is important is the trust within the team. So how we embrace the failures, how we are happy about our victories and what we did well. So I think trust and how we work together because of the trust, because we trust each other, I think it's one of the basic things, I would say, in the culture. And of course, based on that is the fun that we have, probably as you said, the same, yeah. So the fun that we have in cooperation, in communication, in just working together. This is the basic thing I would say.
Hello, I am Diego de Palacio, as the presenter told. I am working for Playsoft. It's a a medium-sized company. We are about 80 people now, and around the half is we are programmers. And I think that the most important thing for having a good team culture is to establish a really good relationship of friendship, or at least very good communication, and with the values added, like being proactive. And to willingness to support others. So, from our point of view, the best thing is that when all the team it's enjoying to be just working together, and there are collaboration, good communication, and supporting the willingness to have a good quality product and being proactive. I think. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm maybe gonna stir a bit because
Feel free.
I was working for almost 5 years at CI Games, and there we had quite a big programming team. At one point, almost 20 persons working on like 2, maximum 3 projects, something like that. And right now at Anshar Studios, we have 9 programmers, and sometimes we're working on 6, 7 projects, right? So we have, and for me, those 2 companies, CI Games, Anshar Studios, they need to have like totally different culture of programming, right? Because right now our main problem at Anshar Studios is knowledge share. So usually when you're a small company like us, you're not hiring only seniors, like we're not a senior house. We have a couple of very skilled programmers, and we have a couple of juniors. So for me, the most important thing is to create and we're struggling with that, I might say, is to create an environment in which a junior can grow. Okay, because for me also, when I was back in the day when I was a gameplay programmer, I had the privilege that I was never the best. So there was always some programmer, some of them are even here, like Hacura, Chris, who are better than me, and I could learn from them, right? So this is very important. And we actually, like half a year ago or something like that, at Anshar Studios, we failed at that because teams were distributed, and for example, some teams were left without any advice, like left alone. So right now, in my company, our focus is to create a culture in which knowledge share is easier, and a junior programmer have the ability to grow faster, because if you help him, he can grow much faster than on his own.
Yes, and I am agree with you. Indeed, I think that great value is to willing to progress. We are nowadays well taking on account as a really great value on the developers to have the willingness to continue growing, to continue improving their skills and their knowledge, and everybody can keep progressing, and for us is one of the greatest values on programmers.
Sure.
Yeah, I also have something to say about it, because our industry is growing so fast, but basically every year we have something new and we need to constantly learn something new. And it's true for every probably studio, even if it is small or it is big. And for example, at Ubisoft Quebec, we are organizing a kind of formal training for all the people who wants to participate. And some expert, external or internal, to provide some training for either it is programmer or artist or any other department. And this is extremely important. It gives a kind of approach for everybody that everybody needs to learn. We need to progress in our knowledge and expertise. So probably every month we have some kind of special training, like C++ 11, 14, like math and physics in programming, like lightning in games. And this is of course totally internally, but it looks a bit like little conference like we have here, and it is very important to keep moving forward.
Yeah, and this is all and well. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is all well when the company is when you have a big company like Ubisoft, when you have the budget to burn through for like if people are not concentrating all the time on the tasks at hand. If you have the room to and time to spare on training. So
yeah, I agree.
Can this be somehow reconciled with the objective for smaller companies to simply survive?
Yeah, it's hard to say, to be honest, right now for me, how small company, because anyway, from my experience, for example, that it takes a lot of time to prepare the training, and I guess in a small company, such person is really just taken outside of his normal work. So I guess it's not easy to do.
Yeah. Exactly. So the problem in our company in like getting new juniors is that I will have to like spend a half time of our like best programmer to sit with him and do like some training. And basically what I try to do is to get a really good junior, right, like best junior that I ever and like put his work on the production from the start, and then like to manage to like have these two people working together. And in our case, I'm really happy about the last like programmer that we hired that had yesterday a presentation. And so like me and Michał, who was like his senior programmer, are like happy that currently he's like after a year he's doing like a normal job already in the team. So
okay, so but it's like the secret that you're saying that the secret is to put juniors already on the front line and not to shield them, not to have them go through I don't know, some protective periods where when their commits are not immediately accepted into the repo.
So like the first month we can like give him some research to do and then like decide if it's worth or not, so he can like work on a separate branch and so on. But then we try to integrate it so he will feel that his like commits and so on are really important.
That he contributes to how the project moves on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, in our case, it's really important. For example, for juniors, indeed, we are trying to select juniors programmer who has already good practices on, for example, on the code, that we see that they have small functions with good names, with some comments, and from this, with good soft skills, they are improving with the senior developers. We used to have continuous code reviews with GitLab. So we are checking almost every commit, and it's a good practice. Even if it's a quick look from the senior developers, it can improve a lot the work of juniors, because they start to work and to think and to get the architecture of the project. So
okay. Okay, so you touched on the topic of code review. And I assume. Oh, by the way, if anyone has questions like during the panel, just feel free to raise your hand, and we want to keep it a discussion. So yeah, so we will just attend to you if you have a question. Okay. So coming back to the subject, I suppose that many of us here have their opinions on whether code review is useful or not, or to what degree it is useful. Do you think that formalizing the process in this way, like having people look at code, do you think that it really improves, and like on a separate axis, does it improve the quality of code, and also does it improve the way people interact between each other?
I would say I can see two different kind of code reviews. So I would say the first one extremely detailed, using some tool and looking at every line of your code you are trying to submit and trying to challenge what you are doing, trying to exactly deeply understand what you are doing, and trying to start some kind of conversation why you did it this way. Maybe there's other way to do it, maybe there are simpler way. Did you think about some other edge cases? So going really very deeply, but it takes a lot of time. But it is very good not only to keep a quality of the code, but I would say it's also very good to share the knowledge between programmers. So code review is not only to really review the code, but also to share the knowledge between the programmers. And the other kind of review is really like not exactly looking at the code so strictly, but just talking about high-level idea. So just maybe even without using any kind of tool, just sitting with another person just by the desk and just looking at the code, and the other person is just telling you what he wanted to do, what he had to do, and how he did it. So just very high level. It takes less time, but also involves a kind of communication and forces people to again to share the knowledge, not only to keep the quality of the code, but also share the knowledge.
And I have to say that there is another important way to make code reviews, and it's not only from seniors developers making code reviews of juniors developers. We used to have the opposite way too. We have sometimes inside projects with commits of lead developers, of senior developers. Juniors are checking the code, and in that way they are more like giving feedback. Here they are kind of understanding the way that one senior or one lead programmer start to use probably some advanced functions or some special type of things. So they are asking later and learning to make these code reviews from.
Okay, so we do it like that. Okay, so we tried a lot of like different types of code reviewing, and the code review like just before commit didn't work for us completely. It's mostly because it was like taking too much time, and basically it was like having someone to stop his work, come into your desk, check it, and then okay, and go. So what we are doing is like basically the main code is like submitted, and then we are like making the polishing phase on that, like optimization, and this is done by a second person. So it's like check the code and see what kind of stuff can be optimized. Then it tells the person that wrote that, it's like you can do this here, and he optimizes that. And then after the project is finished, we dump all the code. So we like try to start from the beginning.
Okay, but does that mean that you sort of change the ownership of the code? Meaning that I sort of understood it that one person writes a feature, right? And then another person takes over to optimize it and improve it?
Yes.
So it's like, it's a little bit like change of ownership of the feature.
Yes, and it's working like that, that the second person that checks that can have like a different view on that points. And for example, if he knows GPU well, or like parallelization well, or like sim instructions, then he can like point out that this, and then this person that wrote that actually learns the new instruction sets and so on. But like what I've said, like with dumping the code, is that after every project that we did, we review the whole code. From this, it takes a lot of time, and it's probably doesn't exist in too many studios. But we have like our own technology, and we just remove everything that's not needed anymore, and just all hacks are removed, and then just leave the core stuff, which is like review that it was working for 5 years, something.
Wow, if you can afford that, then I envy you.
But isn't it that this kind of approach for review, do you have a lot of instabilities in the code when you submit a code which is not really checked by other people, and then after the code is submitted, there is some problem or there are some instabilities. So is it big problem in your company?
Like we say, it's like it needs to be washed up. So someone commits something that is like pretty sure that it's working, then it's committed. Then like someone like says that probably this piece is like breaking the whole stuff, and then we change it. But the iterations are really fast. So like we code and put, and what we've learned from actually this project is that from the very beginning we wanted to have it like running from the start, like completely, and if something breaks, then we fix that, and also in tools immediately. So also in tools, the tools right now are so like stable that I'm not longer using the Control S anymore, like after everything I do.
I think also there's a huge difference in that approach if you're using external technology or your own, I think, because for what we find is that if our project detached aside, let's focus on Unity and on mobile projects for a second here. Usually you're not doing a rocket science in terms of particular lines of code. Architecture is much more important in terms of, are you going to be screwed in 6 months? You know, it's not an immediate feedback. It's right now I've written this and this works and everything's fine, but then there's going to be a change and a change and a change. You're doing live ops because your game is live, for example, right? And in 6 months you're in a problem because your architecture was very simple or not thought out. So I think that we, at our level, at our complexity of our projects, we don't have that much of a problem that I see from like a production perspective. In terms of single commits, let's say that they sort it out between themselves. But what we see what I see on a production level is that there's this big inertia in bad architecture, right? And I personally haven't learned more. I learned more about programming during coffee than during programming, right? It's like talking about architecture with smarter people. This is what worked for me, for example. So not the review part, but the part that I'm in front of this big task, this big feature, and it's very important to think, okay, how does this feature gonna fit in our entire project, right? And how it will affect future features that we like. Sometimes we like know a little bit because we know the genre of the game, etc. So you can imagine what will happen in 6 months, for example.
Okay, so I take it that all of you are like at least a little bit in favor of code reviews, maybe like some forms of it.
So I just wanted to say that we tried not doing code reviews and it wasn't a good choice. So right now we don't have like code reviews that are done on a daily basis anyway, at least that I know of. What we tried to establish in last months, actually, that was the thing we do. We tried to took one of the senior programmers, like lead programmer, senior programmer, whatever, the best one, basically, out of like at least half of his time out of his daily duties, and we tried to put him in, okay, so 1 week work with this team, right, like review their code, maybe do some input, but after a while he would go into too much detail, right? It's not needed in our level of complexity, so he moves to like another project, right? But then those junior programmers, for example, on the first project can, given that feedback, they learn much quicker, much faster, they do better code. I hope they do. But basically this is what we're trying to do right now. But yeah, daily reviews in our, like, you know, in our structure that there's big fragmentization of projects. Knowledge share is very hard between like, okay, this programmer is not a part of this project, right? They're not working on the same project. So it's, I think, almost impossible to do.
Yeah, and what I wanted to confront those views, like which are in favor of code reviews, is that I stumbled upon some research that basically says that, according to research, and that research was performed in business IT and enterprise software companies, that code reviews actually deteriorate the quality of code, because people tend to nitpick on unimportant things and issues of coding style and such things instead of actual functionality of the code, instead of finding bugs. And also another aspect is that some people reported that this hurts relationships between people, because some people may take it personally, may take negative feedback personally. Have you any experience of that?
So I'm just gonna answer the first one, the production side. I think that that's exactly like what I'm talking about with low complexity projects. If you go too much into detail, it's like waste of money, right? It's like art of coding. We called it, how to say it in English, you're screwing an empty form, you're screwing in an empty form. It's like, you know, this is what we used to say, right? Sometimes it's not needed. The second part, maybe I'm going to leave to the colleagues.
Yeah, I'm going to, to give some opinion about it. And for example, for us it's really important to have the developers knows that the code reviews is not for scoring, it's not for qualifying and for something that is going to take on account on his annual or mid-year evaluation. That the code review is for having an improvement between us. So they are not focusing on details, they are focusing on things that they are really think that they are going to improve the quality of the other developers. So with this approach in mind, they are taking these code reviews as a friendly advice, not something to start some conflict. So this is our approach and our daily reviews. Because of that, sometimes they just check the code really fast, and there is no comment, even if there are minor details. It's just very quick, and it's just approving the commits, and that's it.
Yeah, what I find out is that when you have very short code to submit and to review, people tend to find 100 problems in very short amount of the code. When you want to submit 1,000 line, everything is fine, because people tend not to spend too much time. So I can imagine that. I think it's a bit what you said, that having too many complaints about the style in a small amount of the code, it tends to be problematic in code reviews. So most likely for short submit, I would say I just take a person, just give him short look, tell him what I wanted to do, and just short communication. For longer code reviews, I would rather say that it needs to be detailed, that person should spend more time to really focus on maybe almost every line to what can be done better, or what's not good enough. And definitely there are such problems. But anyway, I think, for example, when I was working in CI Games Bydgoszcz, we were a team of 6 programmers, and we were working probably in very similar way as you said, Michał. So we were reviewing post-submit, and it was working quite well, but we were looking only at critical things most of the time. So not checking null pointers, some stability problems, or like exactly some missing data problem or whatever. So it was mostly it. But at Ubisoft Quebec, we're always reviewing every code. But as I said, we're using 2 ways. So the short way or the longer way, but always before submit.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe taking a step back, and not just for code review, I wonder how important it is to have formally established processes in the company, and how does it relate to the scale of the company? Of course, I can imagine that, anyone can imagine, I guess, that a small company does not need a formally defined processes in terms of task scheduling and so on as a larger company. Actually, at Flying Wild Hog, where I work, we are currently having a little bit of internal friction because there is the old guard in the company who are senior enough and experienced enough not to need much formal processing to get the job done. But there are some new people, myself included, who actually prefer to have some more data, in some form, to have it some form of having it written down, you know, like a issue tracker, you know, just to keep track of who's doing what, and you know, I just wonder if issue trackers are even still adequate for today, if we cannot do something better, maybe go in direction of Trello cards or something. How do you manage your task scheduling and, you know, just organizing the work, and if you see that there is room for improvement, maybe somehow?
Okay, so it mostly depends on the moment of the project you are in. So if the project starts, then there's like a lot of space for research, for like slow development. For example, I tell one person that we need to research, for example, like a new visual effect, and you have like a month for that. And he like tries a lot of different stuff. He like shows me from time to time, and we're like discussing where to go next. And then when the project is like going into production, then they're like starting to appear the tasks that nobody likes. For example, like general system stuff, like file systems stuff and so on, save games, blah, blah, blah. And those things I'm like putting into like a normal bug tracker. So we are using bug tracker not only for bugs, but also for tasks, just to remember that it needs to be done. And it's like I'm putting it normally, and then I'm like myself or like resending into like the team members, because I know who is the best at what point. So I'm like choosing the right person. If someone gets like too overworked, then I get tasks from him and like to try to rebalance, and I do it myself. So basically that's it. But like in the first months of like years of the development, I have everything on my head, and I know exactly at every point during the night if someone will wake me up, who is making what, and how much time it will be where he's done. So
do you think that this will scale to 50 people?
No.
Yeah, what I can say is that still I think issue trackers like Jira or something similar, it's still like a main tool, I can say. Anyway, it's also not only for bugs but also for just normal tasks. But
can I add one
yeah, of course.
I will just one thing that it's I think it's important. It's really hard for programmers to make this kind of table that in a month these tasks need to be done. For programmers it's really hard, but for graphicians, animators, level designers, it's very easy, like to estimate exactly to, for example, 5 to 10 days that we'll need 2 months to finish this. So it's a difference.
Yes, exactly. I would say estimates probably are the most problematic part for programming, and at this point I think communication is the best way to deal with estimates. Just when you start to work on some task and you have like 1-2 weeks for the task, you need to give feedback at least until 2-3 days to basically to say if I'm really going to finish this task in 2 or 3 weeks, or it's gonna be way much more easier or way much more complicated. So definitely estimates probably for programming, especially for bigger tasks, is just always a problem. But also I wish to say that at the prototyping phase, definitely there's much more freedom in processes. Yeah, everybody can contribute something which is unique, special, and can just add value to the game. But once we go forward until the end of the game, so we have a lot of bugs to finish, or there are some specific things that needs to be finished. Issue trackers, bug trackers, it's like the main tool to organize all the process in the finishing the game.
Yeah, well, for our point of view, processes are really it's really helpful because it with a process. Some methodology is like predefined, and developers doesn't need to care about the process itself. So we are using a Scrum, Agile methodology, but in more like in the real way of Scrumming. Like for example, in time estimates, we are not estimating time, but we are because we know that the estimating time is not worth it. And having we tried once waterfall methodology, but it was not working fine. We always estimate differently, so we are now approaching like estimating by difficulty, and trying to estimate only the next task that we are going to accomplish on the next week. So with this approach, we are working pretty fine and developing some milestone every week with finished. So for us, it's like that.
Okay, so we at Anshar Studios, we are using some twisted version of Scrum Agile. It's like when you strip everything you can and just leave the essentials, because having a process and not having a process is not a binary thing. It's the more complex your team is, your project is, the harder, the bigger you scale up, the more you need to put effort into processes, basically. So I don't think that you can have a little bit of processing, like only to remember, put on a backtracker, not to forget, right? That's like a bare minimum. You can have distribution task via Trello. This is, for example, what we do. We usually don't plan farther than one sprint, like in detailed estimates, and sprint is like 2 to 3 weeks. So, but we try to estimate, okay, you have 2 to 3 weeks, so what would you do in those 2 to 3 weeks? And every programmer is alive, so I didn't kill anyone for like missing a deadline, right? Because I know that estimating a programming task can be hard, but actually with experience, and if you're in a like a known genre, it's easier. It's like usually you miss maybe a day, right? Or not that, oh, okay, I thought it was 2 weeks, but it's actually 2 years. That's rarely happens, right? So that's the one thing that we do. And second of all is that you should have enough process for people not to feel burdened by it, because programmers especially, it's like, screw you, I just want to do my job, right? It's like, let me have fun coding, right? That's his way of thinking. And the producer is like tearing his hair out because he likes to know when he's gonna get his stuff, right? Like, maybe give me just an estimate, just please, like, okay, you can miss it, but I need to know what we're talking about. So there's always friction on that part. But I think that by trying to estimate your job, you're learning to estimate it. And after 10 years of estimating, you're gonna be pretty good at it eventually, right? So please honor the producers and try to give estimates. They're usually
if you have producers.
They're usually not going to kill you if you miss the deadline.
By the
There's a question from.
Yeah. Can we have a question?
Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Speaking about producers, so I'm just wondering if you have any splitting of tasks, of responsibilities between a producer for programming team and a lead for a programming team. So what is device? And second question, about the knowledge, if you have this kind of device, what about knowledge of the producer? So the technical lead is a lead, and producer is a person who is leading the process and taking care about the production. So do you engage the person to the knowledge of the team, and how deep?
I think this question also involves the definition of who a producer is, and that is getting a little bit tricky.
But I just want to make sure if I understand correctly. can I rephrase the question? Is it good if a producer knows about programming stuff? Is it the correct rephrasing, or can we?
Like about general programming skills and knowledge, of course, but I'm mostly wondering about the particular subject. For example, for programmers for AI or programmers for technical animations or something like that. So in this subject.
Okay. I don't know if I understood correctly, but I'm trying to answer your question, because it happens that I'm more a producer. Actually, I'm a producer that knows how to program a little bit. So
The best combination.
so what I found out is that you always should listen to your seniors, right? And you should always challenge your juniors. That's basically it, because the worst producer is I hated it when I was a lead programmer. I hated it when a producer comes to me and I say to him, okay, we need 3 weeks to deliver it. And they said, okay, you have 1 week. And I said, okay, and then what you gonna do? Kill me? Screw you, right? You're gonna have it in 3 weeks. It's he doesn't have a power to change the reality, right? The producer, he thinks he has, but he doesn't. The producer should deal in information. This is the most powerful tool for a producer, is information, processing this information, and making decisions based on those information. This is the producer's job, okay? If he's just saying okay, I need to do it quicker, he's not a producer, he's a guy with a whip, doing nothing, right? So because of that, I don't think that a producer needs to have a deep knowledge about it. Because if you trust his senior he should trust them either way, right? It's better for communication, obviously, if I know a little bit about programming, right? I was a gameplay programmer, I was a lead programmer, blah, 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 but always more in a management role. So there's always a smarter guy in the room with me. I'm usually the dumbest one. And that's okay, because they should feed me the information, right? And I should trust them on it. So yeah.
And one thing that is very useful in the situation, not only for having a good relation between producers with developers, but for having a better estimations, we used to ask the developers to try to describe the process on, for example, if they are quoting something or some feature that it take 10 days, we started to ask the developer, okay, but in which way, what do you think it's going to be a step by step, the process? So the developers starts to think about the step by step, and then they can detail a little bit more the bigger task, and in that way we have a better estimation, because we have a more detailed features, and in the other
usually longer estimation.
Yeah, well, but more precise. And in that way the producers feels more safe with features that are 1 day long instead of features that 2 weeks, for example. So for us it's working.
Yeah, one thing if I can say about relation producers, programmers, or any other team, I find that it's many times, if you were asking about some kind of knowledge sharing or information sharing, I think it's way much more easier for people to understand what kind of decision is taken when they know the reason or the intention behind it. So when you say, I don't know, we need to finish it in 1 week, like you said. So everybody will think, okay, the producer just want to get everything out of us and we gonna be, crunching all the time. So it doesn't make sense. There needs to be some kind of description of intention. We have important milestone, why we cannot move it later, or why it is so important, and what important we need to deliver for this milestone. Maybe we can drop something which is not that important and just focus on something important and deliver that important feature in very high quality in amount of time. So just giving decision, I think, is very very raw way and not good way. I would prefer to have a bit more information behind for the whole team, not only for lead programmer or technical lead, but also for the whole team, that the whole team better understands what's happening.
Okay. Since
Thank you very much, guys.
we are running out of time, unfortunately. So let's maybe just wrap it up with summarizing. How would you describe that things have changed since you started working in games in terms of the culture, and what do you see in the future as changing? And that would be a wrap after that.
Okay, so that's a hard question. Maybe I will start from someone else, so I will like wrap my head.
Okay. Yeah. So like a couple of weeks ago, we were at a coffee with our senior programmer, and we just saw a build of one of our developers they're doing a racing game on Unity, right? And he's like one programmer, and he's doing a racing game, and we were thinking that's gonna hit you, you're gonna respond to that, but we were like, shit, he just made, like, he almost made a game alone. It's like, cool, right? And remember when we were working at CI Games, there was like 15 of us doing one game. Are we that shitty of a programmers or something? And then it hit us that, oh yeah, we had our own tech back then. And it's, for me, a big change right now is that we can actually, I always, in my heart, I was a gameplay programmer. I never was that interested in those. I was interested in creating mechanics and stuff. And I really like the direction that it's easier and easier for people to do more in a smaller team, to create something bigger, right? It is not exclusive to like Ubisoft to create a big game, right? Well, what now happens is that Ubisoft is creating gigantic games, and we can create big games, but I really like that direction, right? And in smaller teams, it's also then easier to have a culture, you know, that knowledge share, etc. So yeah, I think that let's go into like I would love to have like an AI engine that I'm talking to, like, okay, so put this here, right? And and this here, right? That would be like awesome, like an atom engine that creates everything. So that would be my like ideal direction. No culture then.
Yeah, and well, from our point of from my point of view, something that it improves on the game industry from the past until now, it's that it's less and less frequent to have crunches. It's something that, from my point of view, is changing from 10 years ago until now. And it's really good because this could improve the quality of the code and
the quality of life.
The quality of life. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So well, this is something that I spot.
Just on my side, very shortly, I think when I think about the past and the present and the future, I think everything is way much more accessible. 10 years ago, I think steel industry was a kind of very limited in terms of amount of the people, how you could enter industry, how you could create something. Everything was kind of hard. Right now, everything is so easy to access. You have Unity, you have Unreal Engine, so everything is very accessible. There is very wide range of people working with the game industry. So I think this is one of the main things that have changed. So from the very limited amount of people working on the game to right now to very wide people interested in the games.
You can be your own publisher.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll have to respond for that. Okay, so yes, so he created a game, like a racing game by himself. That's really good. But the problem is that he He's here. Okay, so it's really good. So, but the problem is that you know where you wanted to go because you played a lot of. I'm looking at someone, but you know where to. You knew where to go because you've seen a lot of racing games. So basically, what we are trying to do is build your own racing game, and that's cool. But the problem is that it will be very, very hard to get people interested in that game because they also seen a thousand of racing games already, and that's the problem. So like those tools exist, but making the games is easy. There's like millions of developers. So like getting out of this crowd, like of this bee nest, it will be like mostly impossible. But what I will say, and this will be like on your side, I believe personally that a team of like 4 to 5 programmers, good programmers, not junior programmers, can build their own engine, especially for a game, in a time of like half a year to a year, like a complete engine, just for a project game. And this engine will do exactly one thing that Unity and Unreal can't do.
If I can say something about it, I agree with you. It's great that we have Unity and Unreal Engine and we can work very, very fast and easy. But on the other hand, when we have in Unity or Unreal, we have some templates to prepare, like first-person shooter, third-person adventure or arcade game. Everybody can do it. It doesn't create a value for you need to prepare something unique to sell it. Yeah, I know you have some answer. Yeah, so it's still what doesn't change. Maybe in the past it was easier to create something unique because there were less people working on something, and whoever had some kind of new idea, it was something unique. Right now, I think it's way much more harder to prepare something unique, which is in my opinion extremely important to sell something. Because everybody does something similar, so it's something harder to do it.
Hotline Miami, Game Maker, Super Hot, Unity.
But yeah, that's exactly it. If you have some great idea and creative idea, that's something that's unique, and you are having big success because of that.
Okay, so we have we have questions from the audience. So let's take a few questions, and we will shortly be finishing.
Okay, so my question is, Unity recently started, I don't know, more advertising more openly the unit test feature. Do you think, I'm not sure how does testing look right now in game development. So my question is, how will it change? Is it going to be a big part? Like, are we going to push unit tests to components of our games? Will testing become more relevant outside of QA? Like.
Okay, so I haven't researched the Unity unit tests, but we have, in my career, we had a couple of experiments with unit tests. People were like amazed about it for like half a year, then it died out. People tried it in like one project, then it didn't work out. We didn't move, and it like never stuck really. It's like usually in all the projects I worked on was a part on the changes in the project, the refactoring, the adding features that destroy all your architecture, etc. Like every time the reasoning was, okay, unit tests are such a drag to like maintain, right? So that the time you spend on actually finding that one crazy bug that unit tests would save you from is saving that time is usually, from my experience, is not worth to maintain all the process of creating unit tests. Maybe if there's gonna be some magical way of automatizing this in every way, then maybe, but maybe that's what Unity tried to achieve, but as I said, I haven't researched it. But in my experience, the traditional way of doing unit tests, it may be very good in some low-level components, like math stuff, like, okay, but in your entire project, I personally don't recommend it.
Yeah, and it's this is more true because in the game industry, because every project has his own challenges, he has his own architecture. It's I think, from my point of view, is the magic and the beauty of developing games, that every project could be completely different, and for example, for some applications, it's maybe more easy because there are some kind of already made architecture or some variations. So, from my point of view, it's not unit test is not worth it to have this on.
Yeah, I need to say that on such a big game like Assassin's Creed and the whole engine behind it, we are using a lot of unit tests, but I can imagine that for way smaller team, like most likely Unity team using Unity engine, I guess it's very time consuming because it's just a lot of work to prepare it properly and to maintain it. So I would say it's a big question if it's gonna be really useful.
Okay. So right now we are struggled in a moment that we would like to have some kind of automatic testing during the night. So we would like to put the whole project so it will test itself. And this is something that for current project it's impossible to start thinking about it, but this is something that we will try to develop early for the next project and try to maintain it till the end, and we'll see how it will work. This is something I really would like to have. Currently we have like a QA team on the other side of the ocean, and it works like that. So we put them the build, they test it on night by hand, and they send us the report. But I wouldn't like to spend like QA time for that, like for basic stuff that someone got into the code and it broke something in the middle of the game. So for our team it will be something that we'll need to concentrate from the start to have those kind of tests. But I can't say anything about Unity. I never like run it and open it. I don't know how it works, sorry.
Okay, are there any more questions? Oh, there are some.
Thank you. So I got a question about the estimates maybe. So there's a question about a situation when you are in a position when the release date is announced for the game, like maybe for the bigger games like AAA's. So, and you are not sure about if you finish all the features that are required for the release of the game. Were you ever in a situation like that? How do you handle this, like the communication between programmers and producers? Because there were like situations like something that come to my mind is like a Fallout and Drive Club, for example. Like in a Fallout situation, we had they released like a date for the release of the game, and it was pretty much like a couple of months later the game was released, and it was pretty nice. But for the Drive Club situation, it was like the game was announced and it was supposed to be released on the premiere of the PlayStation 4, but it was released after a year or something like that, and it turns out to be quite tragic for the studio because the Evolution studio was closed. So what do you think about it?
Okay, so I will start. So for our studio it was like quite flexible for like last 10 years, because we were able to move the release date quite like in a flexible way. But I really can't imagine how it is for like a big studio where the release date is actually announced. It's always like on November, so you know that it needs to be released then. But for us, I was trying, like a director, I was trying to not make any crunches at all, just like to move it forward without announcing it. But it's for big studios. It's probably it will be better if that for you.
Yeah, so just very shortly, I think Assassin's Creed is very strictly decided when you need to finish and publish the game, and you need to have a good plan how to do it. Without this, it's not possible. And at the end, when you are approaching the date, you just need to decide what's more important. It's just as simple as that and as hard as that. You need to decide what's less important, and you cannot spend time on that or too much time. And what's more important from the player's perspective, and this is the thing you need to spend time on. This is like that.
So you were in a situation when you had to cut some like really big features?
And it happens, yeah.
Yeah, and in most of games and most applications, the 80% of the 20% of the features are the 80% more used. So we need to think about what features or what topics or what things inside of your game are more valuable for the players, and then focus on this.
Okay, I'm afraid we are out of time, so we are welcome to have additional discussions in the just around the conference and after the talk. So thank you everyone for your attention. Thanks to the panelists for coming and talking to us. Thank you everyone.
Thank you very much.